Hi, I'm Brittany Allyn, and welcome to Savor the Flavors. Sometimes recipes can be a collaborative effort, and sometimes they evolve over time. And both are true in the case of today's recipe. Growing up in Minnesota, my mother and grandmother would make this, and they called it goulash. Well, over the years, the recipe's been tweaked, even the name changed, and we give my dad credit for that. Now we all call it Minnesota hot dish. We're going to bake our hot dish in a casserole. Here I have a 12 by 9. You could use a 13 by 9 baking dish. That would work fine too. I've sprayed it with a little cooking spray so that it won't stick. I've already got things started. Over here on the stove, I've got 1 pound of lean ground beef that I've broke up. And to that, I'm going to add 1 onion that I've diced fine. And for this, I kind of like the yellow onion for a little more pronounced onion flavor. Here I've got a 1/2 cup of diced celery. And this next thing is something that my mother added. My grandmother didn't put this in there, but I think it's a great idea. It's a 1/2 cup of diced bell pepper. Now here at our house, we like a little heat, so I added this. I like to add 1 diced jalapeno. Real fine dice on that. If you don't like the added heat, you can just omit that. And now we're just going to saute this until the meat is no longer pink and the veggies are tender. Now earlier I cooked some macaroni for our hot dish. Okay, the meat is no longer pink and the veggies are tender. What I did was I took the meat and I drained it in a colander to get rid of any excess fat and then returned it to the pan, and that's where we're at right now. Now it's time to add some seasoning. Here I've got 1 teaspoon of sea salt, just like that, and I've got a 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. Now this is pretty much where my grandmother stopped with the seasoning, and my mother too. The last time I was home, we sat down to eat this, and I noticed that my dad had lined up all these spice jars by his plate, and he was just sprinkling them on the top. And I was like, Dad, they would be so much better if you cooked them in the hot dish. And so for Dad, I did it. Here's what we're adding. We've got a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of onion powder, and a 1/2 teaspoon of paprika. And we're just going to give that a stir and get those spices cooking and get that raw spice flavor cooked off, which adds great depth of flavor to the dish. Much better than just sprinkling them on top. Okay, once our spices are added, we're going to add some tomatoes. Now my mother would always can her own tomatoes from her garden, and she would put a pint of her canned tomatoes in here. I like to garden, but I don't can so much. So in lieu of those canned tomatoes, I've got 1 can of fire-roasted diced tomatoes, and I put this in my food processor earlier to kind of make it a little smoother. And here I've got 2/3 cup of tomato juice. And one of those little individual serving size cans of tomato juice works perfectly for this. And so we're just gonna get this all combined. And now I'm going to add to our skillet the macaroni that we cooked earlier. Just carefully add this. It's going to fill up our pan pretty good. And we're just going to stir this until it's all evenly combined. Okay, once we have it all combined, I'm just going to turn off the heat, and we're going to take our hot dish over here to our casserole pan, and we're just going to dump it into the casserole. Fills it up perfectly. Okay, a little extra in there. And then what we're gonna do is just spread this around, and we're gonna put it in the oven to bake. Okay, we have one last finishing touch, cheese. We're gonna take some slices of American cheese and just place it across the top. This was also my dad's idea the last time I was home. In addition to the spices, he was breaking up American cheese and putting it over the top. And I'm like, oh my gosh, cheese is so much better melted. Why not put it on top and then pop it in the oven for a few minutes just until the cheese gets nice and melted. And there you have Minnesota hot dish. Look at that, it's so nice and cheesy. We're gonna serve some up here, get a nice generous square in our bowl. Oh my goodness, that is so yummy looking. Now, I think we should taste. You have to get some of the cheese and the macaroni, those veggies, the meat. There's just something about comfort food. I think my grandmother, Eleanor Wire, would be so proud that her recipe continues to inspire what is truly a family favorite. Savor the flavors of Minnesota hot dish.